Beverly Carter thought she was meeting a young couple to show them a house, but hours later, her car was found abandoned outside with the driver's side door open, and there were eerie text messages coming from her phone that very clearly weren't from her. This is Red Rum, stories about the true victims of crime. I upload on Mondays and Thursdays, so make sure you're subscribed so you never miss an episode. Beverly was just 16 years old when she met 19-year-old Carl, and they got on really well straight away. They soon were in a relationship, and very quickly she got pregnant. Now, this wasn't planned, but it was very much welcomed. And they went on to have 2 other children as well. So they had 3 boys, and they were living their life, their little family. They were really, really happy together. The eldest boy they called Carl, which was the same name as their dad. They named the next one Christopher and the next one Chad. They lived in Little Rock, Arkansas. It's this small city with entertainment, clubs, trails and parks. It's super hot and humid in the summer, and it's situated along the Arkansas River. Her son, Carl, her eldest son, got married and had kids, and those kids really were her life. She was an excellent grandmother. She loved being a grandma and doing all the things that grandparents do for their grandchildren. She was also a chocoholic, so whenever the grandkids would come home from a stay at grandma's, they would be absolutely wired. It really does seem, from the way that the family now talk about their childhood and their lives growing up, they had quite an idyllic time. But that all changed in 2003 when Christopher, the middle child, died in he was an adult at this point, but he died in a motorcycle accident. And of course, this was absolutely heartbreaking for the entire family. And for Beverly, it really made her kind of refocus her life and shift things. She realized that she needed to do the things that she wanted to do. She really needed to grab life now. And so she'd always been interested in interior. She'd always been interested in houses and real estate. And so she decided to do that. She was going to sell houses for a living. She was a super personable woman, and so she got on with people really well. She would just sell houses like that. And it wasn't enough for her to just sell houses. It was making her a lot of money, but she realized she wanted more than that. She actually wanted to teach. She was really interested in education. And so she went into teaching specifically for selling real estate. And again, she thrived there. The students loved her. They learned an awful lot from her. And they really took her warmth and personability. And they said that that was the big thing that really sold her houses. It was her. September 25th, 2014 was a pretty normal day. It was very sunny, very warm. And Beverly gets a phone call that day from a man wanting to view a house. She says, look, that's fine, but as we will learn throughout this case, Beverly was super safety conscious. And so she says to him, look, I want to show you this house, but unfortunately I don't do solo house viewings. So assumedly she would have to wait for a colleague of hers to come with her, or she'd have to know that there was going to be someone else there at the house. So this man says, actually, that's fine. My wife can come. So he puts his wife on the phone. She speaks to Beverly and says, yeah, that's no problem. I'll be there as well. So it will be us 3 together. It won't be a solo house viewing. So Beverly says, that's fine. Great. Thanks so much for doing that. And I'll see you there this evening at around 6 p.m. At 5:15 p.m. that evening, Beverly calls her husband and he picks up and they have a little chat, just kind of a catch up from the day. And then Beverly said, look, she's got one appointment left. It's at 6 p.m. But as soon as she's done with that, she's going to pick up some food and then she'll bring it home so that they can eat together. And Beverly's husband says, great, that sounds good. I'll see you later. Now, 7 p.m. comes and goes, and back at Carl and Beverly's house, there's no sign of Beverly. Carl knows that she's picking up food, so he's kind of in his head thinking, like, what's going on? Maybe there's a line where she's getting food. Maybe the house viewing overran. He's kind of excusing it, like we all do in these situations. And so he waits and waits. But as time passes on, it gets to about 8:15, 8:30, and he realizes that this just isn't like Beverly. She would at least call to let him know what was going on. And so he wonders, maybe she's gone round to one of her son's houses. Maybe something's come up. Or at the very least, maybe she's called one of their sons. So Carl picks up the phone and he calls the eldest son, also called Carl, and he says, look, I'm a little bit worried. Your mother hasn't come home. She was supposed to be meeting me at home with dinner and she's not answering her phone. Now, Carl also hasn't heard from Beverly, so he starts to think this is a bit odd, but he's not too worried at this point. There must be a reasonable explanation. But half an hour later, and still with no sign of Beverly, Carl decide to go out and look for her. So Dad Carl says, right, I will go to the place where she was having the viewing. I know the address, she told me. So I will go there and see if she's around. And meanwhile, Carl, the son, went to her office just to see if she'd popped back there. Maybe she'd kind of got overrun with work. Maybe she was signing a last minute deal. The two head to their respective places. And so Carl arrives at the building where her office is. And as soon as he gets there, he knows it's not a good sign. Everywhere is closed up. It's dark. There's no one around. And so he gets in the car and drives to the place where the viewing was being held at. And he sees his dad there. Now, his dad had arrived and initially he'd seen Beverly's car parked outside and thought, great, she's here. She must just still be inside these couple of hours later. He didn't really know why, but at least her car is there. So he walks up to the car, but then he sees that the driver's side door is open. Now, inside the car is Beverly's handbag, and this in itself isn't actually that worrying, and in fact is quite normal. Beverly would often leave her handbag in the car when she was on viewings, just as another safety precaution, really. If she didn't have her handbag on her, there was nothing on her for anyone to want, for anyone to steal, because she is meeting strangers on a daily basis, and she just didn't know who she was going to meet. She was incredibly safety conscious. So seeing her handbag in the car wasn't necessarily a red flag. But when Carl went to look around the house and then couldn't see Beverly anywhere, he did start to panic, especially given that her driver's side door was open. Beverly's husband and son decide they need to call the police, and so they do. And they arrive at the viewing house at 10:30 p.m. Now, at this point, other people have sort of joined as well, and the police go into the house to see if they can find anything that's immediately obvious as to what might have happened or where Beverly might have gotten to. And they realised pretty quickly that someone had been in this house. Now, this was a house that had been on the market for a while. There were dust sort of patterns around the house and they had been disturbed. So they knew that whatever had happened, at least one person had been in this house at some point this afternoon/evening. Now, that's not necessarily worrying. It's just something that the police are now aware of. And on top of that, they decide to do door-to-door inquiries because if anyone would have seen anything, it's got to have been one of the neighbours. And so they go to do these door-to-door inquiries and they don't really get a huge amount. But one woman does say that she did see someone matching Beverly's description getting out of Beverly's car, and there was also another car there. It was a black car and there was a white man standing by the side of it. But this is all she saw and then kind of went back to what she was doing. So that's all the information they had. But this actually was a significant lead. It's the first time that the police were able to put someone else there alongside Beverly. But then at 2 minutes past midnight, Beverly's husband gets a text from her. Now, he had been texting her throughout the evening, obviously asking where she was, asking if she was okay. And so he gets this text 2 minutes past midnight, and it simply says yes. Then there was another message from her saying, sorry, phone been dead. And then another one, having drinks now. And unfortunately, I mean, in this situation, maybe another person that would have been perfectly normal. But unfortunately, in this situation, Beverly's family knew that this was not Beverly. She never in a million years would have gone out for drinks on a random evening and not let them know that that had happened. If her phone had died, her first port of call would have been to get back home. So they just knew that at this point, something was seriously wrong. Beverly wasn't the one texting them. And they were pretty sure at this point that she had been taken. Because they were now getting activity from Beverly's phone and the police are obviously there, they decide to run a GPS location track on the cell phone, kind of where it's pinged. And they find that it has pinged at 3 different locations. It takes them to Scott in Little Rock, which is mainly farmland. There's not a whole lot else there, a few houses maybe, but the other pings were a little further over, and then the pings stopped. The phone had been turned off. The next day, the minutes turned into hours, and news of Beverly's disappearance spread quickly. And Beverly really is part of the community, so people are wanting to help. And more than 100 search volunteers come out, and they are searching all over, both on foot and in the car. And they are looking for any sign of Beverly, any trace of anything that maybe is a little bit out of the ordinary. And so a couple of the search party who are on foot, they come across in a kind of ditch, they come across a towel. They think this is really odd. And so they report it into police, and police think there is a possibility this could be linked, but we kind of have no reason to believe that. So they kind of have that in the back of their mind. And on top of that, another search group find some fresh tracks in a field and again think this could be linked to Beverly's disappearance. The issue is they don't really have a huge amount to go on. They don't really know what they're looking for other than Beverly. They were told that she was wearing a black sleeveless shirt and some red trousers when she was last seen. Now, police obviously have Beverly's car. And so when they were looking through it, they found her handbag. They also found her notepad. And in this notepad, it was something that she did kind of religiously. She would always write down the details of the viewings that she was going to, the people who had called and booked appointments to go to them. And so they saw that there was a couple, a man and a woman, with phone numbers attached, and they had organised to see the house that night. So they knew that if they had actually made it there, they may be the last people that have ever seen Beverly. And so they call the numbers, and they very quickly realise that these are fake numbers, and the names attached to them are also fake names. So you can imagine at this point, there is no kind of genuine reason for that. There is nothing innocent about that. And police think, okay, something has happened. There is something to do with these names and these numbers. And they realise very quickly that the fakeness of it, they've had to use a spoof like website service. Now, in order to use this spoof service, you have to be registered as a real person. You have to show identification. And so they very quickly know that if they can get those details from the operators, they are going to have their first significant lead. And they managed to. They managed to get the name of the person who that spoof number is registered to. And it's a woman called Crystal Lowry. Now, a very quick background check into Crystal sees that she is married to a man called Aaron Lewis. They've not been married very long. And Aaron Lewis has an extensive criminal record, and it's for a various number of different things. But they also realise that the kind of description they have of Aaron is one that matches the description they were given by the neighbour. Now, it was quite generic. It's a white man standing outside of his black vehicle. But this is potentially significant because this is also potentially the last person that was seen with Beverly. So Crystal and Aaron's home address is just 15 miles away from the house viewing. And so police make their way there. This is at around 10 a.m. that next morning. And so as they're arriving at the residence, they figure they're just going to maybe do some surveillance, like figure out what's going on, get a bit more information. But as they're arriving there, Aaron Lewis he just happens to be leaving the residence, and he clocks the police. He sees them there, and this causes him to panic. And so he jumps into his car and he starts speeding away. And he is going so fast and so panicky and out of control that very quickly after that, he actually crashes his car. And this is a kind of high-speed crash. It could be very, very dangerous. Now, Aaron is okay, he's alive, but he is badly injured. And so police catch up to him very quickly. They arrest him and they say, right, we are going to take you to the hospital for analysis just to see how you are and see if you're okay to come back to the police station with us. But we are going to escort you there. We're going to be with you. You're in trouble, or we at least need to talk to you. But whilst Aaron was in the middle of changing scans, I think he had to have 2 separate scans. Whilst he was in the middle of changing them, somehow he managed to give officers the slip and he escaped out of that hospital. And now they are extremely concerned because not only do they have someone who is avoiding them, but he's also like actively running away. Why would he do this if he had nothing to hide, if he was innocent? And so they need to get him as soon as they possibly can. And they send out this message through news sources. Quote, "We do consider Aaron Lewis dangerous based on the nature of the charge and based on the fact that we haven't located Mrs. Carter." A be on the lookout was issued for his arrest, and he was described as a white man, standing at around 5'8", around 156 pounds, and as a potentially very dangerous individual. And then a 911 call comes in from a member of the public, and they say, "I think that I'm looking at the guy that you have a be on the lookout for. I think I'm looking at him." And so the operator says, "Great, do not tip him off. We will be there as soon as possible." And they do arrive soon after, and they manage to arrest this man, who is Aaron Lewis, and they bring him in. But he is not talking. And in fact, he is talking back to the reporters that are there asking him questions as he's being transported into the police station. There's video footage of him. He's in handcuffs being transported, and one of the reporters asks him, "What did you do?" And then Aaron replies to him saying, "Nothing. Did you?" He's completely he's got such an attitude on him. He really doesn't care about what he's been brought in for. He just cares about kind of having the last word. It's really bizarre. And the police officer talks about Aaron's arrogance when he was in the interview room as well. Now, they have Aaron's phone because they've confiscated it from him. But Aaron says, "You're not going to be able to look on it. You're not going to be able to unlock it. You don't know the code." And so they're kind of talking to him for a little bit longer. And then he says, "Actually, I want to show you something. I want you to hear something." So he's given his phone, he unlocks it, and then he plays them a voice message. And it is Beverly. It sounds like her very much. And she's talking to her husband, Carl, or addressing him. And she's saying that she's okay. She hasn't been hurt. And they need to not call the police. Otherwise, something bad might happen to her. And Aaron goes on after that to say that he can prove that Beverly's alive, but that she doesn't have long left. And he's really, really cold in how he talks about Beverly as well. He's really not seeing her as a person. He's really talking just kind of insignificantly about her life. And just to kind of loop back, we know that the police were there when Aaron had his crash. And so they actually were able to seize his car there and then and take it in for analysis. And when they did, they found a number of questionable things inside. They found duct tape, they found a mobile phone, and they found some unidentified hair fibers. They also get a warrant to search Aaron and Crystal's home, and when they do, they take a number of other things for further forensic analysis. And even though Aaron is not talking, he is not telling them where Beverly is at. He says that it's time critical, but he won't tell them where she's at. And so they get his phone records, they search the cell towers that it pinged off, and they realise very quickly that one of the places he was during the time that Beverly's been missing was Argos Concrete Company. Now, this is Aaron's old place of work. They know that he doesn't work there anymore. So the fact that he has been there is confusing for them, and they ask him, but he says, "Oh, I don't know. I don't know why I was there." And so they decide immediately, although he's not giving them any information, they can just tell he's giving off some kind of signal that makes them think, we need to look into this further. And so they make their way to that location. They arrive as soon as they can, and as immediately as they get there, the officers get out of their vehicles and they're walking around looking, just seeing if they can find any kind of sign that Beverly has ever been there or is there now. And they're walking around, they're looking. And then one of the officers trips over something. And as she does that, she stands back up and turns around, not knowing what she's tripped over. And she realizes very quickly that it is a leg. And so she goes towards it, and looking further, she can see that the leg is of Beverly, and the crime scene itself is horrific. Her arms and legs have been duct taped, and her entire face has been wrapped in duct tape. So she has been suffocated by being covered in duct tape. She had been walked out to what would become the crime scene, and she'd been laid down on the floor. Her face had been covered, and she died from suffocation. Both Crystal and Aaron were charged with murder, and they were questioned further. And in this questioning, It becomes clear that Crystal is very happy to throw Aaron under the bus. And I say this because information comes out later that shows that she was not just a kind of someone watching from the sidelines. She was very much an active participant in the planning of this. And so Crystal agrees to a plea deal. It will see her get 30 years behind bars, but she will have to testify against her husband, Aaron. She told officers that they had decided that they were going to kidnap someone, a rich estate agent basically, and they were going to ask for a ransom of $100,000. And then the agreement was that they would split this $100,000 in an amount that she didn't actually know. They hadn't got that far, but that was the plan. Now, the reason I say that Crystal was heavily involved in this is, very basically put, Crystal and Aaron had only recently gotten married, and soon after that, they had started speaking about Aaron wanted to kidnap someone for ransom. And it was actually Crystal who recommended that, well, estate agents have loads of money, so we should find a rich one and kidnap her and then get ransom from her family. They then Googled estate agents in their area, and they literally clicked on the first one that came up. And we know Beverly was incredibly good at her job. She was so successful. She was just top of the list on Google. And so they clicked on her, they got her information, called her, and we know the rest. We know that Aaron spoke to her. She said she didn't do solo viewings. And then Crystal came on the phone and said it was fine. She would be there too. So to take us back to the night of the disappearance and the murder, we now have a full kind of picture of it from Crystal, really. So it turns out that Beverly had arrived there a little bit before Aaron. She had opened up. She had then gone and sat back in her car and waited. Now, Aaron had pulled back up a little while later, not too much longer, and he had been alone. And so Beverly asks him, "Where's your wife?" And Aaron spins some story about his wife getting held up at work, and it's probably not believable. Obviously, we don't know what Beverly was thinking, but it kind of doesn't matter because it's very soon after that Aaron kidnaps Beverly. He forces her into his car, duct tapes her hands and her legs so she can't move, she can't escape, and puts her in the boot of his car. Now, he had planned to take a photo of Beverly in the boot of his car and send that to Carl along with the ransom voice message. But when he gets home, he realises he forgot to take the picture, and also he forgot to get Beverly's handbag from her car. Now, the reason this is important is because actually their plan revolves a lot around that handbag. They need the handbag because inside there are credit cards, there are debit cards that they were planning to get Beverly's husband to transfer money to, and then they would withdraw it. And so Aaron leaves Beverly at home with Crystal. So again, Crystal is there alone with her. She has ample opportunity to let her go, but of course she doesn't. And then Aaron returns to the scene of the crime to go and get the handbag. Now, we know that the handbag was there when Beverly's husband arrived. So what actually happened was that Aaron arrived back at the open house, and as he arrives there, he sees that not only is Beverly's husband there, but now there are also police crawling around the residence as well. And he realizes it is too late. He cannot get that handbag. And so he travels straight back home. He tells Crystal what has happened, what's going on. And Crystal is the one to say, well, they can't keep her now. They're going to have to kill her. The next thing we have as concrete evidence is CCTV footage of Aaron entering a Walmart, buying a number of supplies, including a shovel, and then coming out of the Walmart and getting into a car, which is driven by Crystal. He's then driven away, and we know the rest from there. The trial went ahead in January of 2016, but just before I get to the kind of outcome of what happened, I just want to tell you about the version of events that Aaron presented to the court, because they are absolutely wild. In his account, which actually was published to his Facebook page as like handwritten what happened, he says that, well, he describes exactly what Beverly looked like, exactly what her naked, dead body looked like, how he had disposed of her body, and that he hadn't even been there when she died. And in fact, she had been engaged in some kind of sexual encounter with his wife, Crystal, and he had come home and she had accidentally died during that sexual encounter. Aaron said that the voice note that he presented to police of Beverly wasn't even Beverly. He'd made it up. He'd actually used some AI software. This is back in 2014, by the way. He'd used some AI software to kind of make up her voice and make it sound like her. But Carl, her husband, who had heard that voice note, knew that it was her. When asked why he would do that, why he would fake her voice on this voice note, he said, quote, "It might be an angle to get something out of someone." Anyway, this was all bullshit, obviously, and he got found guilty and sentenced to life in prison with no parole. He actually got 2 life sentences. He was found guilty of both kidnap and murder. Since Beverly's death, her family have set up the Beverly Carter Foundation, which is this charity that helps real estate workers be as safe as they possibly can. It provides resources, research, information, various different things that are available, and even training and just support at every level of the real estate industry. I will leave a link to that website of the Beverly Carter Foundation in the description box down below. Other than that, thank you so much for joining me for today's episode of Red Rum. And I just have to say, I'm quite ill. I'm sure you can hear it in my voice. So apologies for that. Hopefully by the end of the week, maybe next week, I will be back to normal. Thursday's episode might be a little bit in this voice as well. But I wanted to get this out to you guys. And that's the joy of working on a one-person team. I don't have anyone else who can do this for me. So I hope that you still were able to listen and take in the case and the story. Other than that, just a reminder that there is a Red Rum newsletter. It is completely free. It just gives you a bit more information about the cases and about other things going on to do with Red Rum. And I'll leave a link to that in the description box below that you can sign up for if you would like. I do no more than once a month, but sometimes it's a bit more sporadic as well. It's just really when I feel like, there's been a bulk of cases where there was more stuff to tell you that didn't quite fit in the episode, or other things that are quite interesting, that are in the news, that are to do with crime, true crime. And finally, my new podcast, The Final Cut, which is a horror film podcast. The first season, we are focusing on Saw. Each of the 10 Saw movies has its own episode, so we go in deep, and I'm really enjoying doing that with a co-host. It's a little bit it's very different to Red Rum, but would really appreciate it if you're into horror films at all. It's a bit of easy listening, and I would love to get your guys' feedback on it. So I'll leave a link to that in the description box down below. That is called The Final Cut. Other than that, I will see you guys next week, or I will talk to you guys in your ears on Thursday for your next episode of Red Rum. Bye.